Hello and welcome to the first episode of a new series called Beauty Culture. This is in response to some of the comments that I see on the Defining Beauty series, where I try to focus more on the cultural aspects of where our beauty standards come from, rather than in Defining Beauty where focus is on simply teaching you anatomy. Every now and again I'd read the comment something along the lines of, "This video is aimed at Eurocentric beauty standards and does not apply to people of color." I disagree with that. In the Defining Beauty episode, I use examples of a conventionally attractive Southeast Asian man with an unconventionally attractive Southeast Asian. The point being to explain that certain features transcend culture, race, and creed, and are considered universally attractive by the majority of people. Note that I said the majority and that exceptions exist. Defining Beauty series is all about explaining universally attractive features from an evolutionary biology standpoint. Ancestral women preferred stronger jaws because they indicated greater bite force, fighting ability, and general male health. Over time, we correlated this inclination towards more defined jaws as attractive, as our need for stronger bite force declined with agriculture. There's a scientific research paper on almost every feature of our face explaining why one is better suited to its climate than the other. Take blonde hair for example, which developed as a result of the mutation in the KIT ligand gene. Lighter hair allowed for more sunlight to pass through to the skin to produce vitamin D in regions that got very little sunlight to begin with. Nature didn't mutate this gene just because it felt like discriminating against non-whites 40,000 years later. That wasn't biology, that was geopolitics. That being said, I understand that beauty standards can also differ by cultures. Charles Darwin in The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex was fascinated with this very same concept of cultural versus universal standards. In the book he stated that it is certainly not true that there is in the mind of man any universal standard of beauty with respect to the human body. At the time, he believed that human preference was so broad it couldn't be summarized by certain features, which was supported by findings from The Pattern of Sexual Behavior in 1951 by Ford and Beach, which found little correlation between cultures in preference for body weight, breast size, and other aspects of the female physique. More recently, however, in the 1970s, a renewed interest in the topic and its relation to psychology found that this view of beauty is to some extent false, and that there are certain features that men and women find universally attractive, regardless of culture. A meta-analysis of many studies found that there is a high degree of agreement from individuals within a particular culture, and also high agreement between individuals from different cultures. If different people can agree on which faces are attractive and which are not attractive when judging faces of varying ethnic backgrounds, then this suggests that people everywhere are all using the same or at least similar criteria in their judgments. From the paper, traits such as symmetry, averageness, and secondary sexual characteristics, i.e. sexual dimorphism, are universal indicators of genetic health. Conversely, minor and major facial deformities such as asymmetry and drooping features take points away from your indicator of health. For instance, symmetry in men have been found to correlate to a higher male sperm count. Likewise, a self-reported study found asymmetry to be linked with higher occurrences of respiratory disease. Let's move on to secondary sexual characteristics. From an evolutionary view, extremes of secondary sexual characteristics, more feminine for women, more masculine for men, are proposed to be attractive because they advertise the quality of an individual in terms of heritable benefits. They indicate that the owners of such characteristics possess good genes. This is exactly what modeling agents look for. Extreme zygomatic protrusion or extreme jaws with extreme bigonial width. They're looking for the extremes. There is considerable evidence that feminine female faces are considered attractive. Studies measuring the facial features from photographs of women and studies manipulating facial composites all indicate that feminine features increase the attractiveness of female faces across different cultures. I've already broken down what masculine and feminine secondary characteristics are by each facial region in the Defining Beauty series, and I will continue to do so. What is perceived masculinity? Prominent brow ridges, deep-set eyes, almond eye shape, and so on. Your ancestors have known this since the dawn of time subconsciously because it's how we choose healthy, selective partners. Grammer and Thornhill used facial measurements and found that women preferred large jaws in men. Masculine features, such as large jaws and a prominent brow ridge, are reliably associated with ratings of dominance in photographic, identikit, and composite stimuli. Despite some findings showing a preference for more masculine and dominant faces, several studies have shown that feminine characteristics and faces of low dominance are of increased attractiveness. This means that women prefer a certain type of masculine face on men and not overly feminine, whereas men prefer both masculine and feminine faces, but one over the other. Another interesting side study by Holzlittner and Perret, I think I said that right, in 2017 found that generally women preferred male faces that were moderately masculine. Very masculine or feminine faces were less appealing. However, the degree of masculinity a woman preferred in a man's face depended somewhat on her own characteristics. Out of 500 participants, it was found that straight women preferred more masculine features and bisexual women preferred more feminine features in men. So it does support the case from the other study that your features play a significant role in how you're perceived. The same study also classified masculine faces as having a more robust jaw, narrower eyes, and lips, all of which are the exact same things I talked about in my Defining Beauty series. Features such as a prominent brow ridge aren't a Eurocentric beauty standard. Being forced to have blue eyes is a Eurocentric cultural standard, yes. Having deep-set masculine eyes on men? That's a universal standard because it indicates genetic health and higher testosterone in the womb, which is linked to dominance and survival. For girls, being thin, tall, and skinny is a cultural standard because it's not universal around the world. If you don't believe multiple published, peer-reviewed papers from the Psychology Journal of Cognitive Science, that's your choice. But if you feel like being a person of color means that nothing in my videos applies to you because it's all Eurocentric BS, then I urge you to understand the difference in what I'm saying. I get that not all people feel the same way about attraction. I'm not saying that having everything that's deemed universally attractive on the one face will make that person a 10 out of 10. Humans are far more complex than the animals our initial understanding of evolutionary biology was first built upon. We prefer a contrast of the good and the bad and find ugly features cute, like pugs. Do not at me and tell me that pug breeding is healthy. But that's not to say that we don't have a baseline of what's desirable that's built upon and refined by cultural influences. In some countries, people want to be tanned, and in others, fair and lovely is big business. Everything I talk about in the Defining Beauty series is backed by research papers and sources, if anyone ever checks them. I couldn't pull these anatomical concepts out of thin air even if I wanted to. I get that there are cultural differences between the East and the West, but our world isn't like what it was in the 1900s. We're deeply globalized and interconnected, and with it comes foreign influence, including dominant beauty standards. Beauty is not as subjective as we once thought it was. The fact of the matter is, the world's best looking people all have the desirable universal traits, sexual dimorphism, the research papers have pointed out, regardless of where they came from. Beautiful people are a race of their own, so there's no point bringing race into every discussion. Used facial measure